We are back on MorningLine talking about media and politics. Professor Larry Burriss from MTSU, and I'm a reporter here at News Channel 5, so I have thoughts on this. And the whole idea of fake news and the like. Would you say, President Trump, it's fair to some degree, maybe for that president or any other former president, to say that they felt that they were being treated unfairly?
They all say they've been treated unfairly. All of them say that, and at some level they probably are. There are reporters, there's news organizations who will attack the presidents. I would imagine that if we end up with a Democratic president during the next cycle, that Fox News is going to go after them just brutally, the way they see perhaps CNN going after the president now. So it's going to kind of flip back and forth.
You know, on the local level, I don't see the difference like what you just used as those two examples here between us and the other stations in town. I think we all try to do a good job and fairly, and I hope no one says, oh, we can tell this station's this way and this station's that way. It shouldn't be the case. There may be microcosm stories where you think, well, that was not, and do mistakes happen? Sure. But at the national level, do you think it's fair to say then Fox News and CNN are coming from two different places?
Absolutely. Certainly they are. So when a caller says the media are doing this, the media are unfair to the president, well, Fox isn't being unfair and they are part of the media. So I think that many people will lump the media into one big melting pot. It's not like that. You know, there are lots and lots of other media outlets out there that you can get a different slant, a different viewpoint from.
Yeah, and that one thing too, because at the national level you see more and more of that. That's why I really think and value and hope it stays alive, local media.
Absolutely.
Be it radio, newspaper, TV. The local news coverage, right? I mean, that hasn't changed as much as the national landscape, you think?
I don't think so. I think local media are still doing the kind of job they need to be doing. If we have a story in Washington, does that really affect me down in Murfreesboro? Probably not.
Yeah, unless it's some congressional vote
exactly
that affects
right, exactly right. On the other hand, a story about the mayor in Murfreesboro, that's going to have a real immediate, could have an immediate impact. So I've got to know about local zoning, local school boards, local ambulance services, and the media need to be covering those, and the local media will be covering those.
I just think the vast majority of the type of news we especially cover is not the thing that we're talking about where it gets to fake news. I can tell you today, we're going to be in court for the Waffle House shooter, the accused Waffle House shooter, a competency hearing for him. It's something that everyone, horrible incident. Everyone's going to want to follow that. Another story we're going to continue to follow. And again, we're not taking sides on any of this. The proposed soccer stadium going over at the fairgrounds and the council vote and how that's going to go. Just straight basic news. That's what our reporters will be covering today. We're not going in with a slant. We're going to go to the events and report what happens.
And then hopefully there'll be people who will be looking at the budget. We'll be going through property records. If we're going to sell or buy this property, who's involved with that? Is it the mayor's cousin 3 times removed, or is it that kind of thing going on? And that takes a larger staff to look at that. And when your staff has been cut, you don't have the time or person power to go down to the courthouse and look through all those records like you perhaps need to.
Right. And then you talked about one of your students going and covering it. Was it the president's first visit here?
I think so.
Yeah, that was, to me, when President Trump came here not long after his election and had a campaign rally at Municipal just across the street. One of the biggest turnouts. That was one of the longest lines I've ever seen in this city. And I was very acutely, I was out there in the middle of it reporting it, talking to many of his supporters. They were very gracious and friendly, and we talked, and I was fair to them. There was a pocket of protesters that showed up, but I was acutely aware of being as accurate as I could. I talked about the thousands that turned out for his show, or his performance, you know, in the Municipal, the campaign, and I put into context, it was a very small group. But a group. I showed them, but I didn't make it seem like it was an equal turnout. You have to be fair on that front, and I think the Trump supporters would have been critical of me had I tried to say, well, an equal number that came out, which would have been wrong. And I said, no, there were far more supporters out there of President Trump than there were protesters.
And that's the news. That's the way.
It has to be accurate that way. And spending time with, but you could tell that was not long after he was elected, and the excitement around it. But there was still some anger there already brewing at that early stage, based on what your student encountered.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that the administration really, I think, messed up from the very beginning with the fight over the numbers of people at the inauguration. That is such a minor issue, but the fact that they blew it up and saying this is the largest inauguration crowd ever, and then we have video that shows, well, it wasn't, to fight over something as trivial as that, I think, ought to set the tone.
Yeah, and that's right, early on.
Early on.
And that's a whole other issue there, but I mean, that one just seems... All right, so what exactly do you think is going to happen? Is it going to get worse? Will it get better? I mean, we're in campaign season now across the country in general, not just for presidential race, which is going to be in another 2 years or so, but as I said, I don't know. Was it Jim Acosta, the CNN reporter, that recently walked out of a news conference, which I didn't think he should have walked out.
No.
But I mean, is it escalating or not?
The language is escalating. We saw President Obama, under his administration, there were a lot more attacks on whistleblowers and reporters, trying to put, there were a lot more reporters put in jail. That's dangerous. President Trump is talking. I mean, he's saying some outlandish things about the enemy of the people. I haven't seen any legislation, haven't seen any real attacks on journalists. We're trying to arrest them, trying to put them in jail. So at this point, I'm saying it's just talk. If they want to talk, that talking.
Oh, he's entitled.
Absolutely, and talking is a lot different from an enemies list that we're going to put the IRS on under the Nixon administration.
Right.
So again, if he wants to talk, the president wants to talk, let him talk.
And he has a right to do that.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Nick. How you doing?
Good morning. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm sitting here watching it this morning, and everybody's talking about the media and blaming the media for everything that goes on. And the way I look at it, you can only report what you see and what they tell you.
That's what we're supposed to do.
And and you take the president call y'all fake media, fake news, fake this, fake that. The only thing is, he just don't want nobody to make no reports on him. Because you talk about him, he blames the media. Well, yeah, I think all the government politicians are all fake anyway, but, y'all do a good job, and I've been watching you and talking with you for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think you do a very good job. There's been times I've disagreed with you, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, just like you got an opinion.
Sure.
But y'all do a good, fair job on the media and what goes on. But like I said, people got to understand, if they tell you something there, you can only report what they tell you.
That's right. And you're exactly right. And as far as opinions, sometimes I'll voice an opinion here, as I have this morning here. But in my news stories, my opinion does not count, and he's exactly right. You're just supposed to report on what is said and what happens. The problem is you have to decide what to include and what not. And that's where, as reporters, and that's why these days so many people, have blogs and all this, and they have no background in journalism. That's why it's important to go learn from a man like this, so you know how to be fair and how to try to divvy things up fairly. And
understand that the language you use can have an impact. What we're seeing a lot more now, I think, is what we call perception management.
Yeah.
So I could say, I'm doing a story, I'm doing a report, and I said, well, Nick Burriss said this, or Nick Burriss made this reference, and you may not have done it. But now I've shifted the conversation away from this story back to you, and I'm not going to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah.
So people are going to hear me say that, and there's no argument against that. So that part is fake, certainly. But how do we argue against that? Well, we need for your side to come on and say, no, you didn't say that, or here's what they really said. We're seeing too much spin. We're seeing too much parsing of language. Is the truth? Well, okay, President Clinton said it depends on what the definition of is.
Right.
So against Rudy Giuliani was pretty much inartful, saying, well, the truth is not the truth. There are better ways of expressing that. But again, that sort of thing, the definition of is, they all do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you. And I'm glad you brought that. I mean, people, we live in the moment. I know that. And I know a lot of folks feel that at times President Trump is being treated unfairly, and I think probably at times he is. But at the same time, go back, if you're old enough to remember, what was going down with President Clinton and Monica Lewinsky and that example you just gave. And he was savaged. And justifiably so, based on some of the things that went on there. So it's not like President Trump is the first president ever to but in the moment, you think it's the worst. And many of you, especially the strong supporters of him, will say it is the worst now. But boy, if you really give yourself some perspective, I mean,
Ron Ziegler during the Nixon administration, that statement is no longer operative.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we're sort of spinning things out there. It's not right, but it's been done all the time. And again, I don't see any action against reporters in Washington. We may shut them out of a news conference. Then, if you're shut out, I'm going to give you the story. Yeah. I'm going to attend it. You're going to get the story. We're going to cover for each other, and we may be competitors, but I think most reporters are going to cover for each other and give you that story.
Yeah, if someone's excluded,
exactly
absolutely.
Right.
That's
exactly right.
different. If we're there together, we're competitors. But if someone else is excluded, I'm going to help them out.
Absolutely.
Let's go to Les. Hi, Les.
Hey.
Hey, Les. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm listening to you this morning. I watch your show a lot. First time I've ever called in. I'm a retired law enforcement officer. And I'll be the first to admit when there's bad apples that don't enforce the law properly or do something illegal. Man, they need to be put out of the whatever agency they're with. But I don't understand why reporters or journalists don't do that in their own field. We have talking heads on national TV that, as your guest said, aren't journalists. They're hired for their looks, they're hired for the way they articulate and report a story, and it seems that the owners of these big media conglomerates are one political feeling or party, and they kind of slowly tell these people the stories they like and how they want them reported. For instance, I don't understand, and I don't know, you may cut me off when I mention his name, but there's a guy called Morning Joe. This guy has nothing good to say about our current president. Now, I didn't care for our previous president, but I didn't mind people, covering all the stories equally. But it just appears that these reporters have a tendency to stay with the negative stories and they may cover all the stories. There may be 10 things that the president did today. They'll cover all of them, but they'll give the 2 that were negative 10, 20 minutes on their show.
Like an overkill. I see what you mean. And that's where we're talking about being fair in how you parse the information up.
And I believe it's not because of the local channels. 4 or 5 here in Nashville, you don't have the national hold that a CNN or a Fox or a MSNBC has.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to make the next election if they push the stories the way the owners want them to.
Listen,
it just doesn't seem to be equal along the way anymore. It's just not. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your call, and he's not wrong. I would like you, though, to explain to him maybe the difference between Morning Joe. I think maybe he's talking about Joe Scarborough on MSNBC, and someone perhaps like Sean Hannity on Fox, and the format of their programs as opposed to them being news anchors in a straight news delivery show. I mean, he's right. They're doing that. But talk about why they are in that position.
On both Fox and CNN, we'll just use those at the extremes. The reporters are doing a fairly good job covering. The commentators, okay, if you want news, if you want commentary that is favorable to President Trump, then you watch Fox News. That's just how it is. So yes, there are networks, networks, that are virulently opposed to the president. Yes, there are. On the other hand, Fox News is very much in favor. I bet if you counted up the number of negative things Fox News said about President Trump, the number would be close to 0. So again, the balance is there. So when people say the media are against the president, the media that are against the president are against the president. The Fox News and other conservative media are in favor of the president. So if you want that viewpoint, watch Fox News. That's what you're going to get.
And that's really what's evolved over the last couple of decades. And the unfortunate thing is, in my opinion, if you go to journalism school, both of them are wrong. Having commentators is kind of the old school of the commentary or editorial. That's fine. Now the line is blurred, and ideally any kind of news gathering organization, aside from setting aside, here's my editorial or a commentary, you know, puts things up as real news. And if you listen to Morning Joe or to Sean Hannity, you're getting a flat-out slant. And in general, you're not getting the full picture from that, unfortunately. We'll take a break. When we come back, more of your phone calls and our final segment with our guest right after this.